Welcome to The Solar Panel, the podcast focusing on all things ESG within the warehouse, logistics and fulfillment sector. Joining me today to discuss the electric van market and becoming the third member of the panel of experts, the EV van man himself, Paul Kirby from EV Essentials. Hi, Paul.
Hello there. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Amazing. Yeah, really good. It's Monday morning, and the week is ahead of us. It's fantastic.
And it's a chilly one, but I hope it warms up soon.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I've already had to de-ice a car or two, so yeah, hopefully it'll be plain sailing from here.
Right, Paul, let's get right to it. The EV van market, where is it now? Who are the manufacturers? What are the lead times? Please share some information with us.
The van market, well, of course, it's been a source of some consternation for some period of time with all the availability issues around all aspects of vans, to be fair, both ICE or internal combustion engine vehicles or the electric vehicles that are coming onto the market. But the good news is, Tony, that we have plenty to choose from these days. So, we've got vans in the small van sector, the group Stellantis, otherwise known as Fiat, Peugeot, Citroën, Vauxhall, but also you could include Toyota in that, but they don't actually come under the Stellantis umbrella, an umbrella that a lot of people have never heard of course, except those of us in the industry. But it is a big group of vehicles, and they do produce a decent small van. The Kangoo, Townstar, Citan from Renault, Nissan, and Mercedes jointly is also on the market now, although you can only just about get those. Great selection of medium vans, including Mercedes e-Vito, the Maxus e-Deliver 3, and again another vehicle from the stable of Stellantis that is the Vivaro Dispatch Expert, but also Fiat Scudo and the Toyota ProAce as well. So 5 available in that. But that word available, how available are these vehicles? That they are reasonably available. Maxus is a brand that does tend to have reasonable lead times. There's also a little van from another Chinese brand called DFSK, a little known vehicle, but actually is quite cost effective. But of course, then you've got the large van sector, sort of quite prevalent in logistics and parcels and all of that good stuff, with Maxus, Iveco now coming to the market. First van that can tow. Amazing.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, and then the Ford E-Transit, which cannot tow, but is a nice.
Why can't it tow? What's wrong with it?
Do you know what? I mean, most of them are limited in their towing for whatever reason. My feeling is that it's the back axle. So ideally you want rear wheel drive. A lot of these are front wheel drive, although the Transit is rear wheel drive. I think it's the axle ratios that usually change when you're towing to deliver the power, the same amount of power, but more slowly. I don't know, so that the wheels don't spin. Now, there's a lot of torque coming through the back wheels of all of the electric vans. So, with an average brake horsepower of probably in excess of 180 in the large van sector, is a lot of power going through those rear wheels.
To be dealt with, isn't there?
Yeah, so that's where I think it is. But the Iveco, good news, 3.5 tons, will affect the range, but for some people it's going to really serve a purpose. So there's plenty of stuff available.
Not being an electric van user, or even having any on our fleet, I'm sort of a bit oblivious to how many sort of electric vans are there on the roads at the moment. Do you have an idea?
I do. I have a very good idea. There are 42-ish thousand. I mean, it'll depend on how many got registered last month, but or in the month of January. But around 42,000. We expect to add another 20-something thousand to the market this year. So by the end of this year, 2023, we would expect to see around 65,000 electric vans on the market, which is significant.
Great. Yeah, it's adding 50% in 1 year, which is great news.
Yes, and I suppose the slight caveat to that is availability. Varying availability, with some manufacturers saying that the availability is increasing, and you're getting down to, down to 6-month lead times. But certainly companies like Maxus, Iveco will have probably 2,000 or 3,000 available this year. But I know their order banks are filling, and similarly with all of the others. So, I don't think we will go beyond the 25,000 this year because of the availability issues, but a lot of long lead times still out there.
So let's ask the elephant in the room question then. Electric van users will have range issues just like we do with cars.
Yes.
Where does it work well? Where doesn't it work well? So, which sort of industry sectors lend themselves well to electric vans?
Well, do you know what? There's a myth here, Tony, that and a lot of van users are falling into this category where they try and do really low mileage, or it'll only work in the sort of 5,000-6,000 mile a year sector, and these are facilities management companies, or working on site in small mail vans between a couple of sites. And my feeling is you're losing so much benefit there. That these vehicles will do decent mileage. They'll easily do 80 miles a day, almost all of them. And so 80 miles a day is 20,000 miles a year on a 50-week year, running 5 days a week. So that's a significant chunk of mileage, and that's the sort of area that you should be thinking about. The challenge, I suppose, is sorry, go on.
So fulfillment companies stand half a chance, don't they? They don't do a lot of miles, do a lot of drops, so they don't necessarily do a lot of miles.
Exactly.
But if I'm a sort of a long distance emergency courier, probably not for me just yet.
Definitely not for you just yet. And I'm very much about being fit for purpose. So yes, I'm the electric van man, but equally I'm also a van man at heart. So vans and logistics and fit for purpose and all of those kinds of things are the core to where I'm at. So, when you look at the market, you've got to be realistic. So towing for significant distances, still, even with the Iveco coming onto the market, is still going to be challenging. So there has to be that element of early adopter mindset that goes along with those challenges. But where it's not early adopter mindset is the parcels that are on regular routes. It's on the engineers that are serving communities that in a very specific area. But certainly if you're moving goods on a regular route, it's just looking at that route and saying, is it under 100 miles a day? And almost certainly you're going to be able to tackle it. And if you're doing the occasional extra bit, 20, 30 miles a day, that isn't going to fall out with the realms of possibility. But if you're working through the day and then on call overnight, and you could be doing 100 miles one way and 100 miles back, you do need to seriously think about what is the charging infrastructure that you have and all of the other elements that go to support. What plan B have you got? Because you might need a plan B. But, there are a lot of use cases that electric vans are suitable for, but some that definitely aren't.
I know DPD use some because they sometimes charge up at the open bank of Teslas in Trafford in Manchester.
Yeah.
So I know they've got some. They're definitely not nicking spaces there because there's 18 of them, so it's never a problem getting on the charger. But it does happen me off a little bit. They have to pull in the wrong way round and they take a charger off everybody else. But never mind, that's a whinge of mine.
But do you know what, Tony? It's a really important point though, because charging and vans haven't quite been sorted out yet. You definitely need to be charging where the energy is in your control. Once you get out into the public domain, it becomes very cost prohibitive to do that all of the time. So occasional, but to charge as a rule in the public domain, it means that the total cost of ownership, or TCO model as we call it, is shot to bits. It's never going to work. But if you're able to control that charging environment, charge at home, charge at base, depot, whatever. But then you can also plan where the charger is. But the public charging is not always suitable, particularly for the big vans, where there are height restrictions, length restrictions, width restrictions. All of these things come into play. And when cars and vans meet in charging, it doesn't always work well.
Right, so I've got a dirty old horrible van parked on the drive. What do I do? I believe there's a scrappage scheme. You want to tell us a bit about the scrappage scheme?
Well, yeah, so the scrappage scheme is a very local thing. So there are a number of clean air zones coming in around the country. The latest one, of course, is up in Newcastle, but the noise on the street is about the London scrappage scheme, as they've expanded the ULEZ ultra low emission zone out to the north and south circulars, and are going to be expanding it out to the M25 is the most likely next step. So that's significant. It affects about 5 million vehicles. And from a scrappage scheme point of view, they've put some money on the table to say, if you have a non-compliant vehicle and you're moving to a compliant vehicle, and I'm talking about vans here, that you can have £5,000 in order to do so. Now, what do they mean by that? Do they mean that you're actually scrapping that vehicle? I'm not certain of yet. But basically, you hand in that vehicle, and then that vehicle will either be moved to somewhere where it's not going to impact. It's always going to impact the environment, but it's not going to impact a clean air zone, or whether it's scrapped, as in like put in a squisher and squished. It's a technical term.
Yes. I love it when you get technical, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh dear. Yeah. So if it gets squished, then we remove that vehicle from the ecosystem, which I think is a good thing. But if you go for an electric vehicle, there's an extra £2,500 available. It is only available to small businesses, so business, micro SMEs, I think the term is, and it's businesses from 1 to 10 employees, also charities, and I think there's a couple of other people that are able to do stuff. But it applies to vans, it applies to minibuses. Minibuses, you get a little bit more money. Obviously, the private hire sector, I think, are able to take advantage of it. So there is some, it is very local to London. You've got to have the vehicle registered within one of the 32 boroughs. But it is a significant pool of vehicles, so you need to get in there quickly. There's only I say only. I wish my life was only 110 million, but there's 110 million available to help this. And yeah, go out, fill your boots, because I think it's a great thing to do to stimulate that.
Yeah, and when it's not just about money either, or carbon reduction. There's a real human health aspect, particularly around built-up areas.
Totally.
Getting to electric is really, is really helpful.
It is, Tony. Tony, we spend £3.7 billion every year on keeping people well with, air quality related health issues, things like asthma and so on. And the saddest thing for me is in 2013, a young girl called Ella she had an asthma attack and she died, and she lived in Catford, and so on the South Circular.
Yeah.
And her death was directly attributed to air quality in 2020 by the High Court. It's not just about the 40,000 people a year that lose their lives. This is about Ella, and it's about our moral and legal obligation to clean up our act in our towns and cities. It'll do us so much good for all of us.
I agree. Let's move on slightly. Commercial vehicles like lorries, where are they going? Are they going down the hydrogen route, or do you think they're going to stick with lithium-ion batteries, because they've got to be phased out by, I think it's 2040?
Yeah, so 2035 is the first cut-off, and then 2040 is the big stuff, the 44-tonners. But so 2035, and what we're seeing is, and it's a big surprise, Tony, to be honest, that they're going down the electric route. Hydrogen does feature in the landscape, but the predominant propulsion mechanism is seemingly to be electric, certainly up to around 26 tons. So if you think about refuse collection vehicles and sort of last or middle mile deliveries sort of from a hub, maybe, so the 44 tonners have done their job, or the trains have done their job and got them to a sort of a regional depot, and then they're going from there into the towns and cities. Then electric is coming on strong. So there's quite a lot of a mid-sized, 7.5 to 26 ton electric vehicles on the road, particularly in the refuse collection sector, but also, as I say, in that logistics and warehouse sector as well.
There's a real reason why hydrogen, in my opinion, doesn't work very well. Is the amount of energy that you have to put into it to take electric to make hydrogen, to put it back into electric again. It's sort of only 50% efficient. We don't have the ability to make hydrogen without fossil fuels. It's all feels so counterproductive.
It does, and actually,
I'm glad you're saying it's going down the lithium-ion battery route. Really,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense with that particular inefficiency in the creation. Some would say up to 70% reduction. So if you put 10 kilowatts into creating hydrogen, you'll end up with 10 kilowatt hours. You'll end up with 3 kilowatt hours, and it doesn't make sense, does it? It's very counterproductive, and also getting it to the vehicles at the moment is a big challenge. And the technology is moving fast enough with electric,
very much so, yeah.
Because hydrogen is still electric, of course. It's it powers a battery, which then powers the motor and powers the wheels. But you're right. I agree.
Yeah, the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago about hydrogen in warehouses, where you might be able to make your own green hydrogen and then feed it to a forward truck. I think maybe, I follow a guy called Dale Vince quite a lot, and he sort of says, niche applications, everything else, forget about it. It's not scalable enough, quickly enough to make a difference. And I sort of get that. I think it makes sense.
Do you know what? The one area that, and it's going back to your truck question, the Teva truck. So the Teva hydrogen truck is not actually just pure hydrogen. It's an 80 kilowatt hour battery with a hydrogen fuel cell. But as a pure electric truck, that does around 200 kilometers. I'm sorry, about 120 miles. But if you put this 4 kilo hydrogen fuel cell in it, which doesn't sound very big, but is actually quite big, it turns that 200 kilometer truck into a 450 kilometer truck. But it isn't then solely reliant on the hydrogen, but which you can create, like you say, green local depots or that sort of stuff. But it does make it then actually a pretty reasonably ranged truck, with a decent payload and so on like that. So there is applications where I think it could work, but it'll be about creating green hydrogen and making it available for those trucks. But at least there is two sides to that solution.
I agree. Volta trucks, I see those guys on LinkedIn a lot. Are they going to be a fairly dominant brand in the future?
Do you know what? I love the Volta truck. I think it's brilliant for the last mile or last and middle mile inner city solutions. It's one of those things that's come out from left field, which people just kind of went, that's interesting. It's got a middle seat, so we're talking innovation here. So real great visibility all around, and basically what they've done is bring a fully battery electric truck up. I think it's 16 tons. I think sort of eight and something tons payload, a decent range of around, again, 200 kilometers or so, and maybe a bit more. Really coming to market with the total cost of ownership really bundled in together as a truck as a service, and just trying to really solve problems for companies around air quality, of course, around that visibility and safety, but also accessibility. So just being able to 2 steps and you're into the cab. It's a brilliant idea. And I love the center seat option as well, because it gives space both sides of the seat to take that wet weather clothes off and just kind of dump stuff down and then sit down and get on with the business of driving. So I do love the Volta truck. I think it's a really good addition to the market, and we should see first deliveries.
Are they making any yet? Are they commercially available?
So the first orders for the production vehicles are in with I think around 300 over the next 6 months will be sneaking their way out onto the market. I don't think we'll see the first vehicles hit actually on our roads until around June. But watch this space, because I'll be having a chat with them in the not too distant future to have another chat with Carl Magnus Norden, who's their CEO and founder, or he's their founder now. He was their CEO. They've got a new CEO, but great organisation, and I think really making a solution for the inner cities.
I'll keep an eye out for that because I like Voltage. I think they look fantastic as well. I like the fact that they're designed well, and
yes.
some real, like you say, some real progress there as well. Just very quickly, just to finish off with, you've recently just done a review of the VW ID Buzz van, and your question on your video was it a beauty or is it a beauty or is it a beast? Which one is it?
It's both, but I think it's a beauty without a shadow of a doubt. But
it looks fantastic, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And actually, the funny thing is here, and I'm not just saying this, I actually prefer the van. So there's a van and a car. I did the car version as the Beauty or Beast, and there is a van version the same, of a sort of a review of the practicalities of this vehicle. But so on the one hand, it's great. I mean, as a van, it's great. It's got 200 plus miles range in the real world. It's got a really high charging speed of up to 170 the kilowatts per hour, which is really good, as long as you can find the right DC charger and the temperature's not too cold and the battery's at the right state, of course, because charging is nice and straightforward.
Is it platformed off something like an ID4 or something like that?
It's the same platform. Yeah, so it's the MEB platform, which is their ID range platform. So the same as the ID4, I think, ID4 and 5. But it's got a 600 kilo payload, 4 meters cubed. It's not a big van, it's a medium van. And then the car, which is very posh and sort of lots of light colors and stuff like that, I think is going to get dirty quite quickly. And also that Volkswagen ID kind of tech, glitchy kind of stuff going down as well, which was a little bit of a problem, but not dramatic. You'd get used to it, and I think they'll sort it out in time. But so there was a few things that you kind of went, what? Why have they done that? And then there was some other stuff that was just like, this is great and amazing, and I love it. Certainly, the adaptive cruise control was superb. Once it settled into things. But yeah, no, I think it's a great addition to the market. I think it's definitely going to challenge the market, and that's the bit. What we want is people that will move the bar and challenge the other manufacturers to step up. And it does do that. It does it in the range. It does it in the charging speed, in the two really key areas to the future of the van market, which is charging speed and range.
Good stuff. So in summary then, Paul, there's a lot of vans being sold, possibly 20,000 this year if they can get them to market.
Yeah.
They can do 80 miles a day. There's maybe some issues around towing, but probably not the vehicle for you if you want to do any towing. And I think that's the same with cars. You've got to be very careful that you get the right vehicle. It's
totally.
You've got to be a bit more careful than you do when you buy a car, kind of thing. And I think that's the same with vehicles, with cars.
Yeah,
I like the scrappage scheme in London. Go and get yourself up to £7,500 if you're in a ULEZ zone or the ULEZ zone of London. And I think the final bit I've taken from today is the progression that the electric vehicle manufacturers are taking over standard cars. So they're not just sort of trying to match what's there; they're trying to improve it as well. So the centre seat and the benefits of the VW ID Buzz that you mentioned. Actually taking vehicles forward as well.
Yeah, agreed. It's been the market's an exciting place to be, and I know a lot of people kind of go, vans? Why? Because there's so much to do. It's so important to our sector. They've got to be fit for purpose, but they make such a difference to our towns and cities, and they make people a living on a daily basis. What's not to love?
Thank you, Paul, for your energy that you put into that sector. I love listening to your videos that you put out there.
Thank you.
It's a real joy on a weekend when you're on a beach somewhere or walking through a field, picking up on your stuff.
Yeah.
So that's all for this episode of the Solar Panel Podcast. All that's left me to do is to thank today's guest, Paul Kirby, for all his knowledge around electric vans. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure. Thanks ever so much for having me.
No problem. I would also like to thank Kyle Swindells, producer and marketeer extraordinaire, for all his help putting this podcast together as normal. Thank you, Kyle. And as my daughter constantly reminds me to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell, whatever that means. I've still not worked it out, Paul. I am Tony Gresty. This was the Solar Panel Podcast. Thanks for listening. Until next time, goodbye.